Good afternoon, and welcome to another topical and timely Annette webinar. As you all know, Qatar has been in the news a great deal this week and has certainly been dominating the airwaves in the 18 months since October 7th, 2023. Qatar, also known as Qatar, is a tiny gas-rich country that's situated next to the Persian Gulf on the east and Saudi Arabia on the south. As you'll hear, its vast gas wealth has been used to fund American universities, including, in particular, Georgetown, Harvard, Cornell, Northwestern, University of Michigan, Texas A&M, and Carnegie Mellon University, and U.S. public schools from kindergarten through 12th grade. It also has been funding American think tanks, politicians, and people of influence. Qatar has been given Hamas billions and billions of dollars and funds and supports the highly anti Semitic and anti Zionist Al Jazeera. It harbors the leaders of Hamas in Doha and has supported Al Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood. It also maintains excellent ties with the Taliban and with Iran, as well as with the United States. In 2022, a report by the Network Contagion Research Institute identified Qatar as the most significant foreign donor to American universities. The research revealed that from 2001 to 2021, the U.S. had received $13 billion in funding from foreign sources, with Qatar contributing donations totaling $4.7 billion to universities in the United States. According to the report, the institutions did not disclose these donations as required by U.S. law. In fact, the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Law and former Education Secretary Betsy DeVos had found that there are billions of dollars in unreported money going to American universities from Qatar. And they found that, quote, foreign donations in particular from Qatar have contributed substantially to rising levels of anti-Semitic discourse and campus politics at U.S. universities, as well as growing support for anti-democratic values within these institutions of higher education. Also, we should note that the Qatari defense minister in past tweets has said, quote, we are all Hamas, end quote, we are all Palestine. Qatar uses an authoritarian system of government based on Sharia law. The majority, 90% of the population, is Sunni and 10% is Shia. It also has funded the El Aduaid Air Base, which houses 10,000 U.S. servicemen and coalition forces. Here to discuss all of this is the wonderful expert Claire Lopez. Claire has a weekly blog with One American News, Al Hara, Newsmax, Sky News, and is founder and president of Lopez Liberty LLC. She has been an expert on international and Islamic law and has done a great deal of research on the Muslim Brotherhood and their Marxist collaborators in this country. She has a very, very extensive bio that will take about this entire time to read, but she's also a dear, dear friend of ours. And she has completed Marine Corps Officer Candidate School in Quantico, Virginia, before declining a military commission to join the CIA. First of all, Claire, can you explain what Qatar's objective is in spreading its wealth all around the United States?
Well, thank you so much, Sarah and Annette, for having me. And also thanks to all of you who are with us today, watching and may watch even on YouTube later on. Very much appreciate your being with us today, and then later too. This is just such an important topic, Sarah, and thank you so much for highlighting it. With everything going on in the Middle East right now, and things very much on edge, this is a very timely moment for us to focus on Qatar and its role overall. So what got my attention kind of recently was about a month ago in early February, the Department of Justice and our new Attorney General, Pam Bondi, issued a new memorandum. And in that memorandum, she established a task force called the Joint Task Force 10-7 for October the 7th, right? And the purpose of that task force is explained in the memo, which is kind of short. It's only a couple pages. But the purpose was to support the victims and the families of victims of October the 7th, Americans as well as others, Israelis and more, but also to go after, using the office of the Attorney General, to go after those who support Hamas in the United States under U.S. jurisdiction, and also to focus that on especially our campuses, the university college campuses in America. And then the Department of Justice established another task force, and this one is called the Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism. And the wonderful civil rights attorney, Leo Terrell, was put in charge of that one. Fantastic choice. And so for the two of those task forces, at least part of their focus, each one, and especially with Leo Terrell's task force, are the campuses, are the university campuses in America. So I'll focus on that first, but there's a lot more. And I do promise to leave enough time at the end because I figure some of you at least will want to ask some questions. And I'm open and I'll stay as long as you have questions to ask. So what I took note of there is that they're using the Department of Justice and the tools, the authority of the Department of Justice to go after those who support Hamas. Now, Hamas, of course, is listed State Department Foreign Terrorist Organization list, and it is one of those organizations for which, if there is what's called material support to terrorism, that is against the law. That's specifically a violation. So when Pam Bondi talks about, and Leo Terrell talk about, going after those who support Hamas in America, because that's the reach of their authority, right? It occurs to me that in particular, as they go towards, as Sarah mentioned, not just our campuses, but our think tanks, our lobbyists, our law firms, and on, media for sure. I suspect if they truly follow this pathway, I mean, if they truly are serious about these task forces and going after investigations, those investigations might very well lead in directions they did not expect and maybe didn't even intend, specifically Qatar and Turkey. I'm going to mention Turkey as well. Turkey, of course, a NATO member, a full NATO member, and no, it cannot be kicked out because when that treaty, and NATO is a treaty organization, when it was founded after World War II, and Turkey became a member, as well as many other European countries, it was never dreamed that there would ever be a need to downgrade or to expel a member. So there's no provision in the NATO treaty for either downgrading or expelling Turkey. I mean, the best that can be done with them would be to deny information, to hold back sharing of intelligence and information. And certainly, by the way, do not sell them any F-35 fighter jets. As far as Qatar is concerned, Qatar is considered a major non-NATO ally. And of course, as Sarah mentioned there, we have that great big air base at Al Udeid, by the way, which Qatar pays for. So it's kind of a two-way relationship there. We're both caught in it as I think about it. All right, so let me begin with our campuses, and I'll start with Qatar, and we'll talk about Turkey too. But on the campuses, as we saw throughout last year, and now, into what are we in, the winter or the spring semester on campuses in America now, early part here of 2025, but certainly all through last year, the chaos that we saw on many of the campuses, places that Sarah just mentioned to us all, involved a couple of key groups, and they are Muslim Brotherhood front groups. Anyone who's followed the conclusion in 2008 of the Holy Land Foundation trial, terror funding trial, that is material support to terrorism trial, of the Holy Land Foundation, now defunct and its leadership in prison. But if you followed that, there was issued, and you can find this at Steve Emerson's website, the Investigative Project on Terrorism, or IPT. You can find this document, which is the list of over 200 unindicted co-conspirators. Now, as I said, the trial itself ended in 2008. A year we might recall there was a new administration elected to the White House. And even though the prosecutors of the Holy Land Foundation trial had teed up, all these other 200 plus, both individual names and groups, the new incoming administration decided not to prosecute. Yeah, they didn't want to go after CARE, ICNA, ISTA, MAS, Muslim American Society, MPAC, Muslim Public Affairs, or any of the others. They just, no, that's not important. And so all of the unindicted co-conspirators skated. They just were not prosecuted. So among the groups of the Muslim Brotherhood, which has an umbrella political group in America called the USCMO, United States Council of Muslim Organizations, that's its website too, that name. That's the Muslim Brotherhood's political organization umbrella group in America. And if you go to that website, you can find a whole listing of its founding members. Now, there are many more than the founders at this time, but the founding members included a group called AMP. Sorry for all the acronyms, there's a couple more coming. AMP stands for American Muslims for Palestine. It was founded by a lecturer at the University of California, Berkeley, named Hatem Bazian. And it, again, a founding member of the USCMO, obviously a Muslim Brotherhood front group on the list that we spoke about. You can find it again at IPT. AMP has, as does the USCMO, have both a very close relationship with, wait for it, Turkey. And we'll get to Turkey in a bit. But the AMP is close to the Turkish ruling party co-founded by the president, who's under a bit of pressure right now, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And we know that they have a close relationship. AKP is the party that they founded, his ruling party. The English name, that's the Turkish acronym, but the English name would be Justice and Development Party. And anytime you see that name, that party name, and it's elsewhere, like in Egypt, you know that's a Muslim Brotherhood party. But we know that the relationship is close because they put the photographs of their visits and their gatherings together all over social media. So the photos, speak for themselves. AKP, USCMO have been over to Ankara. How many times? Most recently, there was a visit by the USCMO Secretary General, whose name was Usama Jamal, and there are very nice photos of them together over there. So there's that relationship. We know that. Now, the campus branch of the AMP, more acronyms, I'm sorry, is the SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine. And I guess it recently expanded, and so it now has the name National Students for Justice in Palestine, or NSJP. But also, likewise, founded by Hatem Bazian out of UC in Berkeley, California. Now, these campus branches of the SJP or NSJP, as well as another Muslim Brotherhood group called the Muslim Students Association, MSA. You'll find them on that list of unindicted co-conspirators too. They are very active on campus promoting support for Hamas. You'll notice that I never use the word Palestine or Palestinian. They do not exist, never have, and hopefully never will. There are Arabs and Muslims who live in Gaza. We can call them Gazan people or population of Gaza. There are Arabs and Muslims who live in Judea and Samaria, and we can call them Arabs and Muslims in Judea and Samaria. But all of them came from some other place around the region, be it Syria, Lebanon, Jordan. Certainly over 80% of the population in Gaza is of Egyptian heritage. That's where they themselves or their parents, grandparents maybe, came from. They're Egyptian, over 80%. They're not indigenous people of Gaza. Gaza, if anything, is certainly the homeland of the Israelites, of the Jewish people. If you read in the Tanakh, in the Exodus, Moses and Aaron and Joshua and the whole group that fled out of Egypt. Actually, there were multiple groups, not just one, but they passed through and some of them settled in Gaza. It's been Israelite Jewish since time immemorial, 3,500 years ago. But in any case, those on our campuses who have caused such chaos, occupying campus property, university property, actually causing damage to buildings, doors, windows smashed, harassing, intimidating, attacking, assaulting Jewish students. And you remember Elise Stefanik, what a wonderful representative she is. Again, she will be staying in New York to keep our razor-thin majority in the House of Representatives, not going to the UN as earlier nominated. By the way, it looks like perhaps David Friedman, former U.S. ambassador to Israel, could be among the top, what shall we say, the top names possibly thought about right now to be nominated to the UN, ambassador to the UN for the US. So stay tuned for that. But in any case, you'll all remember that scene in the House of Representatives when Elise Stefanik, this is last year now, questioned the three university presidents. Who were it was MIT, it was Harvard, and Columbia. Those three, I think, right? And the question to each was from her was the same. Does this behavior violate your college regulations? And every last one of these presidents, they're all retired. They're all resigned now. At Columbia, I think they're down to the third one. The two previous both resigned. But every one of them responded, well, it depends on the context. No, it does not depend on the context. If it's anti-Semitic, if it's pro-Hamas, it is not only anti-Semitic and against the regulations of the university, but possibly may also be part of a material support to terrorism consideration. So go get them, Pam Bondi and Leo Terrell. Okay, I want to mention a lawsuit that was filed about a year ago. It was just about a year ago, May of 2024. A multi-million-dollar lawsuit was filed against SJP. It was then just SJP, by families of October 7 victims and others. I'll update on that lawsuit in a little bit, but here, the lawsuit complaint against SJP argues that it's in fact a network of campus groups established by Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood for the purpose of, these are quotes, for the purpose of, quote, providing material support and resources to Hamas. And that material support in the lawsuit is alleged to have been, quote, facilitating intimidation tactics and coercion policies on college campuses across America. What is left unsaid, though, and this gets to the subject for us today, is that the center for the Muslim Brotherhood global network today, I would say two centers. One is Qatar, one is Turkey. I'll mention Turkey first right here and then more on Qatar. The president of Turkey, Erdogan again, was, as we said, a co-founder of the ruling party today, ruled Turkey since 2002, very openly pro-Hamas all that time to the current time. By the way, Turkey is just looking like it's establishing a base of operations and maybe carving out a piece of the carcass that used to be called Syria. But in any case, the Muslim Brotherhood per se does not have a chapter exactly in Turkey, but it has a very strong relationship with Erdogan and his party. Now, many Muslim Brotherhood figures, including Hamas members who've fled places like Egypt when they got kicked out by the military regime of Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, but many of them live and work in Turkey, where they've been allowed to establish foundations, schools, businesses, kind of like a few other places we could think of. And in March of last year, 2024, Erdogan openly declared that Turkey is a country that stands firmly behind Hamas. I mean, this is open. This is not, some behind the scenes, accusation. He says out loud, openly, and repeatedly. All right. So, in May of last year, also, Turkey announced that it was suspending all trade with Israel. Now, let's see. Let's leave it at that for now for Turkey, but just know that if you're going to track, if you're going to investigate the backing, perhaps funding for these anti-Semitic Jew hatred groups on campus, particularly MSA and SJP, you gotta include Turkey in that investigation. Okay, let's go to Qatar. Even more about them. Now, in the Attorney General's memos and in the establishment of these two different task forces, there's no mention of the countries, of Qatar or of Turkey. It just says basically we're going to go after those who support Hamas anti-Semitism on campus. Well, as I'm saying, that investigation, if done properly, glad to help, will lead directly to Turkey and to Qatar. Now, as for Qatar, it has long been what I would call the home away from home for the Muslim Brotherhood, those various figures, like we said, who fled other places like Egypt, which, by the way, in 1928 was the birthplace of the Muslim Brotherhood, founded by Hassan al-Banna and fellow students there, college, university students at the time. Now, for many, many years, you'll recognize the name Yusuf al-Qaradawi. Yusuf al-Qaradawi was, for many years, the senior top juridical scholar of the Muslim Brotherhood, also chairman of the International Union of Muslim Scholars. Now, Yusuf al-Qaradawi passed away in 2022, but the support for the Muslim Brotherhood, obviously, and also Qatar is the base of operations, the headquarters for the International Union of Muslim Scholars. But Qaradawi made Doha, capital of Qatar, his headquarters from 1997, when he got kicked out of Egypt or fled, until his brief return to Egypt in 2011, and then back to Qatar until he did pass away in 2022. Now, al-Qaradawi from Doha, again, hosted a weekly, wildly popular TV show on Qatar's flagship Arabic language media outlet, Al Jazeera. Sure, you're all familiar with that name. He hosted that program for many years, wildly popular, millions of viewers every week. And as well, of course, Al Jazeera extends its reach well outside of Qatar, across the Middle East, but also has branches elsewhere, broadcast branches in the West as well. Al Jazeera is owned by the Qatar Media Corporation, and it, as Sarah alluded to, has been used over the decades by Al Qaeda, Hamas, Hezbollah, and of course the Muslim Brotherhood to propagate jihadi narratives. And the lawsuit filed on behalf of those October 7 massacre victims and families with the federal court in Washington, D.C., highlights Al Jazeera's, quote, collusion with Hamas, including interviews with Hamas leadership figures that the lawsuit claims helped, quote, spread propaganda, recruit activists, and incite violence. Now, as well, Qatar has been, as we all know, key financial supporter of the Gazan Islamic Brotherhood terror group Hamas for decades. And of course, Hamas is the Gazan branch of the original Muslim Brotherhood. But there, living in Doha for many, many years, Qatar hosted the political leadership of Hamas. We're all familiar with the name of Ismail Haniyeh, who made an unfortunate trip to Tehran back in July of 2024 last year, supposedly staying in a protected neighborhood surrounded by IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. But somebody managed to have a bomb placed underneath the bed, inside the room where he typically stayed when in Tehran, and off he went to meet his virgins last July 2024, 31st of July. But he wasn't the only one that lived in Doha and still do. For example, Khalid Mashal still lives there. One emirate over, you've got Abu Marzouk, who finds his cushy digs in Abu Dhabi. But there are more. The current, I guess, top political leadership figure for Hamas, currently still living in Qatar, is Khalil al-Hayya. Although there have been reports that some of these relocated to Turkey. Not sure about that. It seems maybe they're still in Qatar. Not positive. Now, with all of this, and we could outline a whole lot more, but I'm mindful of the time. We would think, that its influence would be known, understood, and resisted. Certainly here in the West, certainly in the United States. But no, we would be mistaken. Turkey too. Qatar's influence in the United States among U.S. universities, colleges, lobbyists, think tanks, law firms is immense. Never mind the media, which unfortunately some of it has been literally bought and paid for. But that influence remains really prevalent. It's hard to understand why after we go through this litany, but it's true. A recently released Israeli hostage reported that one of his Hamas captors told them that Hamas was coordinating with, quote, allies on U.S. college campuses and in the media. Then, as Sarah also mentioned, some of the numbers here, according to the lawsuit that we've talked about, data there that they cite shows that Qatar has poured over $6 billion. Maybe I'm minimizing things. I could be. $6 billion into U.S. universities in the past decade, largest single foreign donor in American academia, and the universities are not living up to their obligations to reveal the extent of foreign funding. Pam Bondi, Attorney General, please, I hope you're paying attention. So as Sarah reeled off some of these names, Harvard, Georgetown, Northwestern, all have accepted, and more, have all accepted such funds, and even established satellite university campuses in Doha. And with that funding, of course, comes strings, and they have allowed pro-Hamas, pro-Muslim Brotherhood narratives into their Middle East studies programs, the curricula, established at the urging of, guess what, Qatar. But U.S. relationship with Qatar is deep and long-standing. We talked about the Al Udeid Air Force Base there. That air base benefits, they go both ways. The influence and the benefits go both ways. But I would say that Qatar takes advantage of those arrangements to pose as a U.S. ally, while in fact playing a real double game. You might know that Qatar, as Sarah said, is a peninsula off of the eastern side of the Arabian Peninsula, jutting out into the Persian Gulf, right across from which is Iran. Now, underneath the waters of the Persian Gulf right there is a humongous natural gas field. And Iran and Qatar split it down the middle, and they jointly exploit that gas field. Lots of coordination going on there. And because obviously we know the Qatar, what would you call it, problems with the Saudi Arabian government, that makes Qatar a very useful in between Iran and Saudi Arabia to exert influence in that way among, for example, the Shiite population of Eastern Saudi Arabia. Now, we've had a lot of other relationships with Qatar, including negotiations over release of hostages, which, to a certain number extent has been successful. It puts the United States in a difficult position there. All right, let me update on a few things that I added notes to this just within the last couple of days, and then we'll be sure to open it up and leave time for you to ask questions. I wanted to mention the March 8th Tucker Carlson interview with Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani. Al Thani, of course, is the ruling clan of Qatar. That interview has been pretty widely criticized, and I think rightly so, for whitewashing, allowing a whitewash of Qatar's support for jihad, for the Taliban. Forget that negotiations back when, before our pullout from Afghanistan, took place between the Taliban and the United States representatives in Doha. But Qatar supported that, supports Hamas, supports the Muslim Brotherhood. So have a look at that interview if you might not have yet, or even clips of it perhaps. Let's see. Now, Marco Rubio, our new Secretary of State, is really getting after it, especially these student protesters who are, for one, holding F1 student visas. They are not Americans. They're foreign students. He's already revoked in the 3 months, January, February, March this year, revoked over 300 of those F1 student visas, which means those students may not remain in the United States anymore and are subject to deportation if they were involved in vandalizing property, university property, taking over, occupying campus buildings, harassing, assaulting Jewish students. All right, let me mention a little bit more about the lawsuit. There's a new lawsuit, I should say, just filed at the end of March by the National Jewish Advocacy Center, the school law firm, the law firm of Greenberg, Taurig, and Holtzman Vogel, filed in the New York Southern District Court against the group that's euphemistically called Within Our Lifetime, its leader, Nirdine Kiswani, against Columbia Students for Justice in Palestine and its representative, Marianne Alwan, the Columbia Barnard Jewish Voice for Peace organization and its representative, Cameron Jones, and against Columbia University Apartheid Divest and its leader, negotiator, you'll recognize this name, Mahmoud Khalil. The lawsuit alleges violation of the Anti-Terrorism Act and the Law of Nations, that they provided material support to terrorism, to Hamas. That's the way to go after these people. They actually, these different groups we just named, handed out toolkits urging support to Hamas. That's material support. All right, let me move on just to finish up here. It looks like the Students for Justice from in Palestine involved very much in all of that. Khalil in early March was arrested and slated for deportation, but activist judge is trying to oppose that, oppose the Trump administration there. Um, let's see. President Trump has withheld 100 million from Columbia University. These are the kinds of actions that can be taken as well. And then a final note, Sarah, and I'll end here with this, and that is I wanted to mention ISCAP. ISCAP is the acronym for Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy, led by Dr. Charles Small. And that group did a tremendous work of research that is behind the new end of March, U.S. House of Representatives act, or bill, I should say, that was passed out of the House. It's called Defending Education Transparency and Ending Rogue Regimes Engaging in Nefarious Transactions. Yes, quite a mouthful. Its acronym is Deterrent. Deterrent Act passed out of the House. A number of things barred schools from contact with the PRC, China, Iran, North Korea, Russia, lowered the threshold, this is important, for reporting foreign contracts and gifts, lowered it from 250,000 down to 50,000. That's important. But the work by Charles Small and ISCAP, tremendously important. They published a report called Foreign Influence and Anti-Israel Bias in K through 12 classrooms. Sarah mentioned that, very much worthwhile looking up. I know this has been a fire hose, and I know there's so much we could say about this more, but please let's open it up and let all of you jump in.
Thank you so much. This is a great overview. There's so much going on. We've gotten a lot of questions. One tiny correction. The three presidents were from Harvard, MIT, and Penn, not Columbia.
That's it. Right.
Right. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
No, you're right.
okay. Okay. All right. Some of the questions have to do with Qatargate. Qatargate, as you know, is actually an investigation of some of the people that are in Prime Minister Netanyahu's office, who seem to have been on the take from the government of Qatar. And a judge has just recently ruled that the Netanyahu aides, Yonatan Orach and Eli Feldstein, will remain in custody until tomorrow, Thursday. And the suspicions against them include transmission of classified information, contact with a foreign agent, bribery, breach of trust, and tax offenses. The prime minister himself was questioned, but there have been no charges against him personally. So there are people in his office that have been charged. Some of the other questions have to do with the fact that we are deporting people from MS-13 and other. Why are we not deporting people that are very involved with Students for Justice in Palestine?
You mean investigating, right? Going after them.
Investigating, yes.
Yeah. Well, that is why I was so hopeful when I saw these two memoranda coming out of the Department of Justice, as I said, about a month ago. Actually, I'm sorry, no, 2 months ago in early February. We're in early April, aren't we? That was 2 months ago in early April. And I was encouraged by that because it specifically talked about investigating and going after those like SJP that openly not just committed crimes on campus, vandalizing campus property, occupying buildings and rooms and so forth, and harassing and attacking, assaulting Jewish students, but handing out these toolkits for protests and that sort of thing, which again I think certainly can and I hope will be gone after as material support to terrorism. But yes, of course, we're also going after MS-13, that's Mara Salvatrucha Trece, the gang that comes out of El Salvador. and also Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan, uh, originally a prison gang down there in Venezuela, now with a presence all over the United States. And obviously, we know that those, as well as cartels like Sinaloa, Zetas, Golfo, have all been designated together with MS-13 and Tren de Aragua as foreign terrorist organizations. So they are. Tom Homan, a fantastic border czar, Christy Nome, new director of the Department of Homeland Security. And then, of course, just recently, Sarah Carter named the drug czar to go after especially narco trafficking. So they are going after all of that. But you're right. We are hopeful now that they're also, I hope that these memoranda, these two task forces, really will go after those on campus, because it's in full swing right now. Even as I said, I guess this is the spring semester. Um, it might calm down a bit over the summer, but maybe not. They've got to go after these people now, and for actions in the past as well. I hope they do.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, now we've had several questions about Steve Witkoff and his ties to Qatar,
Hmm.
um, and also Pam Bundy and
Uh-huh.
her ties to Qatar.
Right.
Um, they seem not to be objective because they have had we know that Steve Witkoff had a hotel and he was bailed out by Qatar when he went bankrupt. And we know that Pam Bundy had been a lobbyist for Qatar. Is there any way that there can be some sort of an investigation on them? What are your feelings
Well,
about this?
I don't look at either one of them, our Attorney General Pam Bondi or envoy Steve Witkoff, um, as in any way um, deliberately not genuine, not committed to upholding the United States, our laws, and these memoranda. What I am concerned about is that perhaps they could, and their staffs could, maybe make use of some briefings about realities of the Middle East that, maybe just not in their background. I mean, I couldn't build a hotel to save my life, right? But neither have they been steeped in Middle East, Islam, Jihad, Sharia realities the way some of us have. And so I look at both of them as sincere, committed, honest patriots. I really do. But I also think that there is some information that perhaps would help them to better deal with the interactions. And we're intertwined, with Qatar in so many ways. We talked about Al Udeid. We talked about the hostage negotiations. I mean, I can understand why you can't, as an envoy, go into the Al Thanis in Qatar and say, "You're terrible. You're Muslim Brotherhood. We hate you. We want to destroy you. Oh, can we work on releasing the hostages?" You have to find some way of discussing things with them that is not overtly pounding them over the head with hostility. And so, in a way, I mean, that puts Steve Witkoff in a kind of a difficult position, but I also think that he would benefit quite a bit if there were time and the access and the ability, to provide him a little bit more briefing on the Middle East, the history, what is the Muslim Brotherhood, why we think that's a problem in Qatar, what is jihad, what is Islamic law, does he know that under Islamic law, it is actually obligatory for practicing obedient Muslims to lie to infidels? It's in the books of law. Yeah, I actually read Islamic books of law, and here's one right here, right in front of me on my desk. It is obligatory to lie to infidels. I'm sure he doesn't know that. I think he's a very good and a sincere man, but would love to get some additional briefings to all of the above.
Yeah, yeah. We are in a very tough position with the Al Udeid Air Base. which the Qataris gifted to the United States. And the fact that Hamas is a terrorist organization and we can't have ties to a terrorist organization. So we do rely on the Qataris for the negotiations. Um, Having had said that, I think certain people who are put in these positions, I believe, should be better educated on what who we're dealing with. And as you say, if there's an opportunity to educate them, I think we should. Um, Another question that came across was about the universities. That's something I've done a lot of work on going back many, many years. Um, there certainly it started in 1978 with the publication of Edward Said's book Orientalism, and it spread across the Middle Eastern studies programs to the humanities and the social sciences. We even see a prejudice against Israel in the hard sciences sometimes. And, we see, Rashad Khalidi, Joseph Massad, these were all the proteges of Edward Said. And they've spread this kind of anti Israel incitement. In fact, I wrote an article recently about how I was in 2000 when the Camp David II talks broke up with Bill Clinton and Yasser Arafat. Eliakim Rubinstein, who was the Attorney General of the State of Israel, came to address the group and spoke about how much was offered to Yasser Arafat, including most of Judea and Samaria and all of Gaza and shared sovereignty of Jerusalem. And he didn't say yes, he didn't say no, he just walked away from the table. And then Rashad Khalidi wrote a book that's used as a textbook called Resurrecting Empire. And it's used throughout the United States, saying what was offered was so minuscule, it was laughable. So this is, a complete distortion of the truth. And we've had this going on. And now we see, also I have here on my bookshelf a book called the Arab World Studies Notebook, which has reached millions and millions of young children and junior high school through high school by Audrey Shabazz. It's a curriculum guide. And this is, extraordinarily anti-Israel. So where they give the poetry of Mahmoud Darwish, who is extremely anti-Israel for young children to learn. So, there are inherent biases, and now it's been trickling down from kindergarten through 12th grade. And do you have any ideas of what can be done to fight against these biases?
Yeah, that influence, just as you say, Sarah, has really spread throughout our academic system. I don't know if the um, what would you call it, the de-establishment of the Department of Education can or will help getting some of those curricula back where they belong, down to the state and the local levels, which is where we, all of us, wherever we live, can have an effect once that authority returns to the local level. Certainly with our voting for local school boards, for example, but also paying attention, within our own families. It might be children, might be grandchildren, nieces, nephews, whatever. What are they studying? What do their books, their textbooks teach them? Um, and that's the benefit I see, especially of returning education back down to the local level. But it's also, where that puts additional responsibility on all of us, to stay on top of what the curricula are,
Right.
in those schools where our maybe family members might be.
Right. I would like to recommend to parents of children to look at what they're being taught, what kind of extracurricular activities they're asked to engage in. Sometimes they're asked to engage in anti-Israel demonstrations, and what sort of material is in their textbook. And, if you care about, preserving the state of Israel and American democracy and Western values. I think this is something that you should really try to engage other parents in and talk to your local schools about this. It's
You
really
know,
important.
I'll add one more thing, and that is about the university level. We have learned, I mean, thank you to the House of Representatives for so many of these hearings and the people who've appeared before them, certainly the Elise Stefanik's of the House. Thanks to them for revealing, helping us to see on live TV what's going on at some of these places. Now, anybody who may be an alum of one of these places back when, you know, it was different on those campuses, might want to engage with the alumni office of that university. Let them know that donations will not be forthcoming unless and until they, you know, take the steps necessary to ensure a safe, a fair learning environment for all students, an end to the anti-Semitism and Jew hatred campaigns on campus. You know, the alumni will get together, will not be donating, and this is why. Explain why.
Right, right. I hope it's helpful. We know that the Qataris and their vast gas wealth can out dollar us, but I do think it is helpful. Let me see if there are any other questions that have come in from the audience. Yeah, okay. Are you aware of legal insurrection founded by Cornell law professors? They have been investigating anti-Semitism, DEI, and related topics for some time.
Yes, absolutely. And it's possible to go online and find them and, you know, their cohorts, find the toolkits that they have put out on the internet for use by students to cause a
Right,
ruckus on campuses.
right,
And
right,
one more thing about this that I would mention. There is something that a lot of us call the red-green axis. Red for the communist Marxists, green for Islam, Muslim Brotherhood front groups, and so forth. We haven't talked really much about the red part of that, but understand that at in any place, any one of these campuses, and also in the streets, when we see these demonstrations, protests, take note. For example, back in January of 2024, and again, upcoming, I don't have the date right in front of me, but it's coming up pretty soon. Another event, let me see if I can find it quickly, demonstration coming up. But let me go back to the January 2024 one. In Washington, D.C., there was an event called March for Gaza, March numeral 4 Gaza. And you can still find that website. As far as I know, last time I looked, it's still up online. And there on the page, you will find a button that you can go to see the entire list of those, not just who actively participated on the streets that day in January of 2024, and will again in whatever this thing is coming up. I can't find it so quickly. But you will find the list of the groups that support, signed on to, signatories of support, or something like that it's called. And you will find RevCom USA, Revolutionary Communist USA. You will find Communist Youth of Washington, D.C. You will find World Workers' Party. You will find Freedom Road Socialist Organization. These are all communist organizations, and they participate. Answer, the acronym. It's a very long one, the expansion of it. But communists, socialists, they are right there side by side with these Muslim Brotherhood groups that we're maybe more familiar with. Look out for that too.
Okay, what I find particularly appalling is we saw October 7th. Most sane people in the United States, and certainly most Jews, were in deep, deep mourning. By October 8th, there were posters from Students for Justice in Palestine to hang on college campuses to come out pro Hamas demonstrations, where these young students seemed to be informed and knew more than Israeli intelligence, the Israeli military, about what was happening on October 7th, 2023. And people are looking into this right now. But
Oh,
Students for Justice in Palestine and the National Muslim Brotherhood associations seem to be aware.
yeah,
If they
yeah.
weren't, they certainly were very, very quick in producing these posters and sending them out to hundreds of Students for Justice in Palestine campuses around the country. And
Yeah, absolutely right. I saw that too, and a lot of questions. I don't know the answers, but a lot of questions. But by the way, I just found this website. This coming um, Saturday, that'll be April the 5th, there is something called March on Washington. You can find it by looking that up online. March on Washington, Stop the Genocide, 1 p.m., Washington, D.C. And again, I'll bet you dollars to donuts. You look at the groups that will be involved there. They will be the exact same red green axis groups as we saw back in January of 2024 in the March for Gaza. March on Washington this Saturday. That's what it is. That's what I was trying to find.
thank you so much, Claire. This has been amazing. Next week, we're having Sinem Sudi, who is a Turkish expert from the Foundation for Defense of
Mm.
Democracies. He himself is Turkish, and we are going to delve even further in Erdogan's connections to the Muslim Brotherhood and, see what we can do. I should tell you the Deterrent Act, thanks to Congressman Baumgartner, has been passed in the Congress, but it still has to go to the US Senate. So if people want to call their senators and ask them to please pass the Deterrent Act, which will lower the threshold of what has to be revealed from foreign donations from $250,000 to $50,000. And that is really important. And we need to have transparency of which foreign governments are funding our universities and our K through 12 educational programs. Claire, it is always, always a pleasure to deal with you. Thank you so much for coming on
Thank you
today.
for having me. Thank you to all of our listeners and viewers.
Oh, and I have to, please, we need your support. So if people could go to www.emetonline.org, we do need whatever kind of charitable dollars you can give to keep us running, to keep us operating and informing our members of Congress on Capitol Hill. And my husband's going to tell you, or wants me to tell you, please vote for slate number 19 for the World Zionist Congress. And Annette will be represented there if we get enough votes. Thank you so very much. Thank you so much, Claire.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Sarah.